Rain never touched the garage. Not real rain. Anyway, what poured from the sprinklers was colder, harder metallic water that carried the smell of rust and detergent. It hissed off the hoods of 100 parked cars as Dion Cobb backed into the concrete pillar, eyes level, heartbeat steady. The two men blocking her path didn't belong here after hours. Polished shoes, no ID tags. One wore a company polo over a shoulder holster, amateur mistake. The other had a badge clip from Sterling Security, the same department that sent those cheerful safety newsletters every Friday. Their grins were identical, confident, careless, and mean. "You don't clock overtime here, sweetheart," the taller one said, stepping closer. His voice bounced between the pillars. "Mr. Sloan says you've been poking around where you don't belong." Dion shifted her toolbox, thumb brushing the small brass key she kept tied to the handle. Her father's key. It had no door anymore, just memory. She could feel the engraving worn smooth by years of calloused hands. "I fix lights," she said. "They burn out fast in this building." "Cute." The shorter guard moved to flank her, flashlight beams slicing the air. "Why don't we talk about the footage you accessed last week?" Camera logs from Sublevel 3. Her eyes flicked up toward the nearest dome camera. A red LED blinked lazily in the dark. She'd repaired that one herself. It always ran a second behind real time. "You know," the tall one said, "there's an easy way to make this disappear. You go home. Forget what you saw. No reports. No copies. We call it even." He was too close now. Dion smelled aftershave overlaid with dust. Her back hit cold concrete. The hum of the ventilation fans deepened, a low industrial growl she'd learned to trust. "Machine didn't lee. Mend it. Mr. Sloan doesn't like trouble." The shorter man added, "Neither do we." Dion's left hand slid down the wall, fingers finding the maintenance valve for the sprinkler line. A soft vibration. Pressure. She remembered her father's voice from the barracks in Kuwait. "You can't win a fight you refuse to see." The tall man reached for her shoulder. Dion turned the valve. A hiss exploded into rain dense, pounding, chemical. The fluorescent lights reflected off every droplet, turning the garage into a storm of silver needles. Both men staggered back, blinking through the downpour. Their radios sparked as the water hit. "What the?" Dion grabbed the fire extinguisher from the pillar, yanked the pin, and sprayed a white arc at their feet. The foam coated the concrete, slippery and bright. "Step back," she said, voice steady. The taller one lunged, slipping on the foam, crashing against the door of a sedan. Alarms shrieked. The shorter guard fumbled for his weapon but stopped, his gun soaked, useless. From above, a camera swiveled, capturing the chaos in shimmering light. Dion raised her face toward it, water streaming down her temples. For a second, she saw her reflection in the dome, tiny, defiant, alive. Sirens echoed from the street. Someone upstairs had hit the panic button. By the time security arrived, she'd set the extinguisher down and wiped her hands on her coveralls. The two men were kneeling, coughing water, shouting over each other, their stories already diverging. Chief Howard of Building Security appeared, T crooked, tablet in hunt. "What the hell happened here? She attacked us." The taller guard sputtered. Unprovoked, Dion kept her gaze level. "They cornered me off the clock. I activated emergency sprinklers to deter assault. Camera should confirm." Howard frowned at his screen. "Cameras went down 15 seconds before this started." She almost smiled. "Then somebody doesn't want confirmation." The brass key swung from her toolbox. Tapping rhythmically, she picked it up and slipped it into her pocket before anyone else noticed. The police arrived next, blue lights strobing against wet concrete. Statements were taken, credentials scanned. The guards spun their story faster than the fans overhead. Dion answered each question with the calm of someone trained to give coordinates under fire. At 2:14 a.m., they let her go. Not cleared, just dismissed. Administrative review. Howard said, HR will call you in the morning. Outside, the city's night air felt thicker than the sprinkler rain. Dion stood under the sodium streetlight, steam rising off her coveralls. A taxi passed, its tires slicing through puddles. She caught her reflection in the glass tower, opposite tiny figure beneath a giant name in chrome letters. Sterling Holdings. She walked 3 blocks before her hands began to shake. Not fear, residual adrenaline. The kind that takes longer to leave the body of a soldier than the battlefield. In her apartment, she hung the soaked uniform over the shower rod and laid the brass key on the counter. Under its dull light, the metal gleamed like something alive. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text appeared. Don't open your locker tomorrow. HR will handle it. No signature. She turned the key between her fingers, listening to the faint hum from the refrigerator, the same pitch as the fans in the garage, the same industrial rhythm that never stopped, even when men tried to bury truth under noise. Dion wrote a note on a scrap of paper. Valve C2, tripped manually confirm camera lag. She folded it once, tucked it beside the key, and set both inside the tin box she kept by the window. Outside, the city buzzed with unbothered life. Somewhere above her, in an office that never turned its lights fully off, Holden Sloan would be rewriting the story, already turning truth into policy, fear into compliance. She pressed her forehead to the glass, watching condensation blur the skyline. The sprinklers had stopped hours ago, but she could still hear them soft percussion on metal, like memory refusing to dry. When dawn crept up between the towers, Dion slid the brass key into her pocket and whispered, "Let's see which door you open next." And with that, she stepped into the day, a faint smell of smoke and iron following her own private weather. Proof that the storm had only begun. The brass key warmed against her thigh as the elevator climbed. It felt heavier today. It was a quiet weight, a pocketed anchor, while the car ticked past floors and a lemon cleaner scent tried to smother the night. Har lived on 19, behind frosted glass and succulents that never seemed to die. The carpet muffled footsteps. The thermostat was set a degree too cold, the kind of chill that kept people agreeable while they signed. Dion checked in with the desk, slid her battered badge across the counter, and watched it disappear into a drawer like a coin, into a wishing well. Ms. Cobb, the receptionist's smile didn't move her eyes. Mara Keene will see you now. Mara's office had a window, but the blinds were half closed, letting in blades of sun that striped the table. A legal pad sat square to the edge, a capped pen aligned like a compass needle. Mara herself was early 40s, neat tailored charcoal, soft voice, hair pulled back in a way that said order was a survival skill. "Thanks for coming," she said. "Please sit." Dion took the chair that faced the door, back straight, hands flat to keep them quiet. The room smelled faintly of eucalyptus and printer toner. "This is an investigatory interview." Mara began. "I'm required to read a few things first." She did, tone even, checking boxes with her eyes. "Policy numbers. Your cooperation is appreciated. You may have a representative present." The script traveled a well-worn groove. "I'm fine," Dion said. Mara's pen hovered. "You reported an incident overnight in sublevel 2. 2 guards and a sprinkler activation. I reported an attempted assault, deterred by building safety systems." Dion said, "Cameras should corroborate." Mara didn't look surprised. "That's the problem. The cameras went down 15 seconds prior to the incident and came back 30 seconds after. It's consistent with scheduled maintenance." According to the security department, maintenance at 2 in the morning. She met Dion's gaze, held it a beat, then wrote something in a margin Dion couldn't see. I've also received statements from officers Delaney and Ruiz. Their accounts conflict with yours. Of course they do, Miss Cobb. A small plea in the tone. Not quite a warning. Help me help you. Dion inhaled slowly, the air conditioner feigning weather. They blocked my exit. They referenced camera logs I accessed legally to fix a blind zone on sub-level 3. One reached for me. I opened the valve. I used the extinguisher to create separation. I didn't swing. I didn't run. Mara's pen moved again. Not just notes. Calculations. Y-access camera logs. Light fixture was shadow strobing. People get dizzy under that. I logged the ticket and the pull. That's true, Mara said, almost to herself. You're thorough. Blinds trembled in a faint vent current. The slats clicked, a dry insect sound. That was the quiet beat. Circulation, hum, paper edges breathing. Any interactions with senior leadership about this? Mara asked. Mr. Sloan, for example. None. Mara nodded like she'd expected that answer and wished she hadn't. Here's where we are. You're on paid administrative leave, pending investigation. Your badge access will be temporarily suspended to sensitive areas. Turnout will secure your locker and chain your personal effects. Don't open my locker, Diane said. Mara's eyes flicked up. Excuse me, it's been compromised. I received a text. From whom? No signature, but they knew the policy language. Mara stopped writing. The window blinds cast a new set of stripes across her cheek. Can you forward that to me? I can show you now. She slid her phone across the table. Mara didn't touch it. Read it upside down. And the line between her brows deepened. That number belongs to a pooled device. We issue them for certain departments. Security. I didn't say that. The door opened without a knock. Chief Howard filled the frame. T-straight today. Face shaved too close, so his skin looked sanded raw. You asked for me. Come in, Mara said. Ms. Cobb, this is Chief Howard. We've met, Dion said. He took the seat beside Mara. Sideways. One knee out. Body turned half toward the door like a man who always plans an exit. Ms. Cobb, I reviewed footage. Maintenance outage is documented. No malfeasance. The outage was convenient, she said. Convenience isn't admissible, he said. Logs are. Speaking of logs, Mara said, sliding a printed sheet across. There's an anomaly. Ms. Cobb's badge accessed camera archives at 21. 17 last Thursday. Later, at 21. Sanchurar. The same login attempted to export a clip from sub-level 3. It failed. Dion felt the key dig into her thigh. Heat under pressure. I never exported anything. Howard shrugged. Then your credentials are compromised. Which is also a problem, Mara said, evenly. Chief, I'll need your team to preserve all server activity, collect devices from Delaney and Ruiz, and produce the work order for the outage. Howard's jaw did a small tick. We follow process. Good, Mara said. Follow it louder. He stood. Understood. Then to Dion. Leave the building after this. Don't interfere. When the door shut, Mara exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a week. The blinds rattled, then stilled. You've got enemies, she said quietly. The kind that know where the policy lives. I've had worse. Mara gave a small, humorless smile. I don't doubt it. She tapped the pen against the legal pad. Once, twice. If you have anything off-site copies, notes, keep them safe. Do not email yourself from company servers. If anyone asks for your phone, you ask for a warrant. Your HR, Dion said. Aren't you supposed to ask me for my phone? I'm supposed to keep the company safe. Mara said. Sometimes that includes the people who still tell the truth inside it. Silence settled. The eucalyptus scent faded under the sharper note of hot dust in the vent. Her phone buzzed again. A new text. Unknown number. Conference room 24. See? 10 minutes. Alone. Diana looked at Mara. The HR director's eyes moved to the message, then to the door. Whoever that is, Mara said, assume as we don't coordinate. They assume I won't warn you, will you? Mara capped her pen. Set it down like a chess piece. I'll walk you to the elevator, then I'll accidentally take a call. In the hallway, the carpet swallowed their steps. A group of executives flowed past like a school of bright fish, scent of cologne trailing. Holden Sloan moved among them, novice sweat, haircut that looked expensive because it wasn't trying to. He caught Dion's eye the way a hawk notices motion in brush. Morning, he said. Smile. Cool. Long night. Productive, Dion said. Good, Sloan said. We value productivity. His gaze drifted to Mara. Make sure this gets handled. It's being handled, Mara said. Sloan nodded once. Already somewhere else. The executives slid away. Heat and perfume and money. When the elevator doors parted, Mara touched Diane's sleeve. Don't go to 24C. Why? Because it's under construction and the cameras there never work. Then where would you go? Mara hesitated, then wrote a number on a sticky note and folded it twice. If you need to talk off record. The brass key pressed a crescent into Dion's skin as the doors closed. It hurt in a way that made her feel awake. She got off on 22 instead, stepping into a corridor that smelled like drywall and coffee. She followed the signage past covered furniture and stacked boxes until she reached a small utility room labeled Telecom. Locked. The brass key found the edge of the old lock plate and tapped once, twice. A ritual, more than function. Habit cued her hands to find the other key, the one she'd filed years ago to fit half these doors. Inside, the room was a narrow lung of metal racks and blinking lights. Fans pured, steady and indifferent. The air was warm, a dry oven of servers. She closed the door, killed the fluorescent overhead, and let the machine glow do the work. Her phone buzzed again. 24C? Now, last chance. She typed back. Send your badge to the lobby. We'll talk in front of the guard. No reply. Dion moved to the patch panel, eyes tracing colored cables like veins. She wasn't it. Not by credential, but she'd spent enough nights in rooms like this to know where the unlabeled lines went. She found a port marked with tape, no printed tag, always a tell, and followed it to a small device screwed to the underside of the rack. A repeater, or a bridge, or a ghost. Her breath fogged the steel for a second. She didn't touch it. She took pictures. She recorded the serial number, the MAC address, the dust pattern around the mounting screws. Chain of custody begins with the eye. The handle turned. Soft. Careful. Someone testing the door. She slid into the shadow beside the rack, feet silent on the rubber mat, the hum swallowing the sound of her pulse. The handle tried again. Firmer this time, then stopped. Footsteps retreated down the hall. Construction noise filled the silence. Sheetrock rasp. A power driver whining. Dion waited 30 seconds, then opened the door to an empty corridor. A paper coffee cup sat on the floor near the corner, lipstick mark on the lid. It was still warm. She left by the freight elevators, phone on airplane mode, lungs tight in a way that had nothing to do with dust. On the loading dock, a forklift beeped, backing up slow, orange light spinning. A gull cried from somewhere it had no business being. Her locker smelled like old metal and citrus wipes. She rolled it open, and stared. The tin box by the window 2 nights ago had a twin here. Same brand, Zamiden. The lid sat crooked. Inside, the brass key lay on top of a folded sheet of paper that hadn't been there yesterday. Her father's key, her note, and a new note. Typed, "You missed a camera, look up." She didn't move her head, just her eyes. There, in the upper corner of the locker bay, behind a perforated grill, a pinhole lens stared back with insect patience. She felt her throat cool, then warm. Footsteps approached, 2 sets. Casual. She shut the locker with a gentle click and pasted tired on her face. Bobby from Janitorial rolled by with a mop bucket, whistling off-key. A woman from accounts cradled a stack of binders like a baby, glanced at Dion, and looked away. "Everything good?" Bobby asked. "Low. Sami as ever," she said. "Sama as ever's getting worse," he said, and rolled on. Outside, the sun finally burned off the morning haze. The brass key cut an oval in her pocket. It was no longer just a memory of her father's hands or a habit to rub when rooms turned cold. It was a sensor now, a measure of pressure in a building that rewarded silence and punished friction. She crossed the street to the cafe and ordered coffee black. It tasted like over-roast and something scorched. She held the cup until the heat stopped hurting, and the smell anchored her. Her phone lit up with a new message from an address that looked like a machine tried to pronounce a name. "Sloan wants a statement for the board. He'll expect contrition. He respects chain of command. 3 p.m. 42nd floor. Arrive early." She typed one sentence and deleted it. She typed another and kept it. "Tell him I'll be on time." Through the glass, Sterling Holdings glittered. The blinds on 19 had opened somewhere. Mara would be writing careful emails that said everything but named nothing. Somewhere, a chief would be tightening logs like tourniquets. Somewhere, a man in a navy suit would assume a storm could be managed by memo. The brass key pressed and released with her breath. Open. Close. Open. She pictured the server room's unlabeled bridge like a spider on steel, and felt the familiar stillness settle over her. It wasn't peace. It was aim. At 2, Wushaba. She would step into 42. She would sit beneath the cold air, and the long table and the framed awards, and she would let Holden Sloan measure her like a problem to be solved. He'd bring weather. She'd bring the door. The boardroom breathed cold. The vents whispered, pushing air that smelled like nickel and new carpet. Light fell in long panes off river-facing glass, bright enough to bleach the city and silver the conference table. Holden Sloan stood alone at the far end. Jacket off, cuff links catching. He thumbed a smudge off the lacquered surface, then looked up like he'd known the minute she stepped from the elevator. "Miss Cobb," he said. "Please." She took the chair that let her see the whole room, the door, the windows, the reflection of anyone crossing behind her. The brass key in her pocket found bone and settled there. A car horn bled through 42 stories of glass. Somewhere below, sirens braided, then faded. Sloan slid a leather folder across. Inside lay a printed statement on letterhead that favored serif dignity over mercy. Incident acknowledgement and conduct improvement plan. A signature line waited for ink. "We all want this fixed," he said, cleanly. Dion kept her hands on the table, flat, to stop them from doing anything she couldn't take back. "Define fixed. You acknowledge your role in last night's disruption," Sloan said. "You commit to training. You refrain from accessing systems outside your scope. In return, we refrain from further action. And if I don't sign," he smiled with half his mouth, "then we proceed." Process can be drafty. The conference phone sat in the center like a small, black manta ray. Its mute light glowed red. Dion's eyes moved to the camera bar under the TV. The lens was a dark bead. Company rooms this high always recorded when it mattered. The trick was who owned the recordings. Two security officers cornered me. She said, "A scheduled camera outage can't explain why their work order was time-stamped after it happened. I'm told otherwise," he said. "By the men who wrote it," a small exhale through his nose. "You're bright. That's not always an asset in facilities." Her phone buzzed once in her jacket. A silent insect. She didn't move. Sloane did, the way people do when they want to measure what a noise did to your face. He didn't get much. Mara Keene slipped in without knocking, folder hugged to her ribs. She took a chair 2 down from Sloane, aligned her legal pad, and drew in a breath. She didn't let go of. For 4 lines. "We should note this is an HR investigatory conversation," she said. "No disciplinary decision has been made." Sloane's glance said, "Thanks, and don't get in front." Of course, Chief Howard arrived with the sound of an elevator sigh, then footsteps that tried to sound like authority. He chose the chair nearest the door and left his jacket open. A small theater of readiness. "Everyone here?" Sloane asked. "Good. Ms. Cobb, your shift last night placed you in sub-level 2. During a documented maintenance window, a sprinkler discharged and an extinguisher was deployed. 2 officers issued incident reports citing your non-compliance. You accessed camera logs last week outside your chain of command. You see the shape of this." "I see a pattern," Dion said. "Patterns can be subjective," Sloane said. "Our liabilities aren't. Liability increases when you ignore predatory behavior," she said. "When cameras fail at convenient times, when work orders get backdated." Howard's jaw made a small square. "You accusing my people of falsifying documents. I'm describing cause and effect." Sloane steepled his fingers. "Ms. Cobb, we've built an ecosystem that functions when people trust the chain. When one person decides the chain doesn't apply, the chain broke first," she said. Silence rolled a few inches, hit the far wall, and came back thinner. The vents whispered, somewhere in the ducts. A tiny rattle clicked like a moth. Mara unchapped her pen. "We need to talk preservation," she said. "Server logs. Work orders. All devices used by officers Delaney and Ruiz. The outage ticket. We'll also need to secure any unlabeled network gear in telecom rooms." Sloane's face didn't change, but something behind it flinched. Unlabeled gear. "Facilities discovered a repeater under a rack on 22, Mara said. "If it's company installed, IT will confirm. If not, we have a separate problem." Howard's head turned a fraction. "Who told you that?" Mara looked at her notes, which was as good as saying, "Not you. We'll need to isolate the device and document chain of custody. No one touches it without IT present." "Of course," Sloane said, voice level. His index finger tapped once against the table. "We're not afraid of light." Dion's phone buzzed again. 2 haptic taps. Spaced. She slid a hand into her pocket, like she was adjusting the chair, hit the side button, and looked down as if to smooth her sleeve. A preview flashed. From Unknown. Room 42. "Ampere's side cam is hot." Tapped the spider on the table. She lifted her cup. A tiny dust spider. What the janitors called the fuzz that gathered where microfiber cloths missed, sat by the conference phone. She lowered the cup and brushed the web aside with one finger, just grazing the mute button. The red light went dark. "Our counsel would like to join," Sloane said smoothly, and tapped the touch panel on the wall. The screen bloomed blue, then settled on a waiting room menu. He didn't notice the mute. "This is Pruitt," a voice announced through the speakers a beat later. "Am I live?" You are, Sloane said. Dion didn't look at the camera, but she imagined Pruitt's office, the tasteful books, the framed degrees. A man who billed by the sway of his lamp. Ms. Cobb, Pruitt said, warm as an overcast afternoon. I want to assure you, our aim is de-escalation. Your signature today protects you from what I didn't do, from the mess. He said, the mess is bigger than you. Sloane put his palms on the table. Here's what I'm offering. Paid leave, counseling, no termination in file. In 6 months, a clean transfer to another site at equal pay. All we need is your acknowledgement that last night's actions fell outside policy. And if I say the policy failed me, she said, then this becomes adversarial. He said, not unkindly. No one wants that. The brass key edged up against her knuckle, like a nudge to attention. She thought of the unlabeled device, the lipstick ring on the coffee lid, the text that used the phrase chain of command, like a password. She thought of the locker note. Look up. I'll need copies of all video from last night, she said, all logged. The maintenance ticket creation time. And a guarantee that my phone isn't seized without a warrant. Howard snorted. Who said anything about seizing? Your officers asked me for it in a stairwell at 2:05 a.m., she said. No witness, no receipt. If we're pretending that was policy, write it down. Mara Spen paused. Chief, Howard spread his hands. A misunderstanding. Then we'll write down what the policy is. Mara said, pen moving again. Pruitt resumed his purr. Ms. Cobb, corporate can be a rough sea. We're offering a lifeboat, and I can swim, she said. A small smile snapped across Sloane's face and was gone. There's an easier way to be right than being loud, he said. Try being right. The line of his jaw changed angles. For the first time, he looked like the day might leave a mark. He closed the leather folder, then opened it again. The act of a man choosing which mask to wear next. Let me be blunt, he said. If you won't sign, we move to preserve our interests. That includes a full forensic review of your access history, locker, and workstation. It includes witness interviews. It includes revisiting prior performance concerns. Name one, she said. He didn't. He let the threat live as fog. The vents hummed. Someone's stomach growled, quick and embarrassed. In the glass, a cloud crossed the sun, and the river went from bright steel to dull pewter. Mara closed her folder. We'll need to pause, she said. I have to ensure device preservation steps are outlined before any collection. Chief, I'll send language. Ms. Cobb, you should have representation present if this escalates. She slid a card across, corporate logo on top. Her personal number penned small at the bottom. Off record stays off record until you decide otherwise. Sloane looked at the card and then at Mara. We're on the same team, he said. I know, she said. I'm trying to keep us there. Pruitt's voice returned, faint with room echo. Holden, a word offline. Sloane tapped the touch panel to private, forgetting the mute again. Voices shrank to insect murmur. He leaned toward Mara, speaking low. She's not going to bend, then don't try to break her. Mara said, she's the wrong shape. Everything breaks, he said, not quite softly. It's math. Dion watched the window while they whispered math. In the glass, her reflection looked like a cut-out dark sweater, hair pulled back tight, a face that didn't explain itself. The brass key warmed under her grip. Her phone buzzed once more. From unknown. Don't leave by the main bank. Someone's waiting. Freight. Sublevel. 5 minutes. She stood. Chairs murmured against carpet. I need to use the restroom, she said. Pruitt's voice grew clear again as Sloane brought the room back. Of course, he said. "We'll be here." Howard made a small motion like he might follow. Mara beat him to it. "I'll walk her." They moved into the hall. The door closed on the cold and the lacquer and whatever Sloane was about to say next. They walked past glass offices where people pretended not to notice them. The hallway smelled like toner and lemon polish. "Freight, Dionys under her breath." Mara didn't look at her. "Fourth door on the right," she said. "Regular volume. Bathrooms are past that." At the freight elevators, the security camera blinked a green status dot. A red call button waited under a thumbprint smear. The metal doors were scarred, old freight that had been painted over money gray. Mara stopped. The quiet beat found them. No hum, no tap. Just a held breath of hallway where even the lights seemed to wait. "You're right about the device," she said, so soft. Dion barely caught it. "I didn't put it there." "I didn't say you did. Holden thinks he's correcting weather." Mara said, "He doesn't understand the building is climate." The freight bell dinged low. Industrial. The door slid back. No one inside. A smear of dust where a box had been dragged. "If I step in," Dion said, "does the door close on me?" "Only if you press the button," Mara said. She met Dion's eyes, then a brief lock that wasn't quite promise and wasn't quite apology. "And only if you stand still." Dion crossed the threshold. The car smelled like oil and old rope. The brass key pressed her palm as if to say, "Choose." The doors shut. The car jolted once, then slid down smooth. In the small mirror above the panel, her face hovered pale and still against the dull steel. The floor counter ticked, 41, 40. Down through numbers, like falling past windows. She watched her reflection as if it were someone else's. The key made a crescent in her skin. Somewhere above, lawyers talked about seas and lifeboats. Somewhere below, a dock light blinked against concrete. When the car opened to sublevel, the air came up warmer, carrying the damp smell of tires and bleach. Somewhere, a forklift beeped. Somewhere, a shoe scuffed. The text had said someone was waiting. She stepped out anyway. Concrete held the night. The sublevel breathed warm and wet. A stew of tire rubber, bleach, and old rain tracked in by delivery trucks. Sodium lamps buzzed in cages overhead, turning skin the color of tea. Somewhere to her left, a forklift beeped in reverse, then idled to a chesty purr. Dion stepped out of the freight car and let the doors whisper shut. The brass key pressed a crescent into her palm. She didn't pocket it. "Not yet. Over here." A voice from the shadows, low and steady, not trying to scare her. She didn't move toward it. She moved 2 steps right, where a caged utility bulb threw a slice of light across a pallet of copy paper. She angled herself to see the reflection in the freight's brushed steel. A man detached from the darker dark and lifted both hands. Fingers splayed like he was walking into a TSA line. "Noah Pike," he said. "Third shift electrical. My badge says vendor because HR can't decide if I'm staff." He nodded at her hand. "You can keep holding that. I'm not here to be stupid." "Prove it," she said. He slid something across the oil-stained floor with his shoe, a phone. Screen up. A green text thread open. The last 2 messages were hers, stacked above his. "Room 42 amperes. Side cam is hot. Tap the spider on the table. And don't leave by the main bank." "How'd you get my number?" she asked. "Pulled it off a work order after Delaney asked dispatch for your location at 1:58 a.m. Noah said. "I wish that sounded less creepy." The alternative was watching a mistake become a crime. Forklift brakes squealed, then settled again. A drip somewhere made a metronome out of the space. She left the freight's false safety and crossed into his light. He was mid-30s, lean in a way that said, diet more than gym. Shirt sleeves rolled past his wrists. The smell of electric rooms clung to him, ozone, and dust warmed by ballasts. His eyes kept skimming the dock lane, that nervy, learned scan of a tech who'd been yelled at enough to expect it. "You put that repeater on 22, she said. He winced, like she'd pressed a cold coin to the back of his neck. "Installed it under instruction," he said. "An email chain that doesn't exist anymore told me to patch it. Cash envelope told me not to log it. I told myself I was keeping the lights on." He swallowed. "When you see your kid 3 nights a week, you get real good at don't make waves. And yet," she lifted a brow. "And yet," he said, with a small, tired shrug, "your name went on a list to be taught a lesson that I couldn't watch." She said nothing. The hum and drip did the talking. Down the lane, a dock light flickered like a pulse behind a curtain. "Delaney and Ruiz were supposed to escort you out of the building this morning," Noah said. "Only escort meant the kind that doesn't need a form." Chief's team pulled power to the main cams. That side cam in 42 amperes was on a different branch. "I left it that way." His mouth twitched. "Don't worry. I'm already aware I've moved from keep head down to career-limiting choices. End of 2. "Why me?" she said. "Why this building? Why now?" He huffed a laugh that wasn't funny. "You made Mr. Sloan look mortal in front of an audience. Mortal men with stock options hire people like me to make variables go away." She let that sit. The key warmed against her skin. "You have proof, or just a story that rots if it's only yours?" Noah reached into his back pocket and produced a little clear vial, the kind sold with screws at the hardware store. Inside, a micro SD card rested like a dead fly. He held it by the plastic cap. "Pulled it from the repeater before I sent the email," he said. "It logs MAC addresses and timestamps. It shouldn't, but someone asked it to. I bagged it with clean gloves. I can write the chain on the label if you want it pretty." "Not pretty," she said. "Credible." She took the vial with 2 fingers, then, without looking, slid it into an inside pocket. "The device, gone," he said. "10 minutes after we spoke, someone beat us there, left behind a PoE injector to keep the switch from screaming. Sloppy, but effective." "Show me." He hesitated. "You understand we're at the part of the movie where the people you want to root for get their tires slashed." "I don't watch movies," she said. "The details are never right." "True," he said, and the line of his mouth softened into a flash of humor. "They never show how much everything smells like mop water." He jerked his chin to the corridor. "Come on." They moved through a service hallway where the paint changed shades halfway and never got fixed. The lights hummed in different pitches, one ballast ticking like a wristwatch, another whining like a mosquito. She walked half a step behind him, watching his shoulders more than his feet. Twice he stopped and listened without looking like he was listening. Twice she matched him. The telecom room door on 22 had a new swipe reader, shiny as a fresh crown. Noah keyed in a code, then used a Torx on 2 security screws that shouldn't have been there. He held the screws in his palm so they'd go back in the same holes. The door swung, and a wall of exhaust warmed their faces. Inside, rows of racks blinked like a quiet city seen from a plane. A plastic milk crate acted as a cable tray under an older switch. Every building had one, a retrofit that became permanent. On the floor, alone in Hector, lay like a forgotten shoe. Whoever pulled it knew where to look. Noah said, "No cable ties cut that didn't need cutting." Dion pulled out her phone. "Don't point that at me," he said, instinctive, then realized. She photographed the injector from 3 angles, with the time overlay on. She got the serial number clean. She shot the rack as a whole. then the floor around it with a glove tip barely in frame to show she hadn't touched anything. "Find me a bag," she said. Noah rummaged in a gray bin and produced a pack of quart-size anti-static sleeves. She shook one open with a snap, slid the injector in without skin contact, sealed it, and wrote the date, time, location, and content in block letters. Hairpin hovered. "Custodian Cobb," she added. "Witness Pike." She handed him the marker. He printed his name, the way men do when they learn to write on job site forms. "You're good at that," he said. "I used to sign for things that mattered," she said. He looked at the key in her fist. "And that, it opens a different door," she said, and didn't elaborate. A whisper of radio crackle brushed the hallway like weather. Noah went still, head tilted to the jamb. A second later, voice too, low, without consonants, the shape of men trying to be soundless. "Options," he said. "Make the room look uninteresting," she said. She slid the injector bag under the milk crate, stuck the edge where she could tow it free later. She wiped the floor with a corner of her sleeve where her shoe had smudged dust, then blew gently across the disturbed grit. No swirl pattern, just a dulling. The handle turned once, didn't give. A knuckle rapped twice, playful as a cat at a door. Noah's mouth tightened. "Technicians," he said, so quiet she felt it more than heard it. "Real ones knock like they're late. That's a fisherman." The rapping stopped. Shoes scuffed away. They didn't go far. Noah's phone lit. A crescent of glow he smothered with his palm. He squinted at the notification, then showed her without moving his wrist. "Mara Keene, 2 on 22. Don't open. Cut through archive." "You told her," Dion said. "I think she told me," he said. "I don't know what team she plays for, but I'd rather have her in the stadium." They slipped out the back of the telecom through a cable-chase door, with a broken latch no one had fixed because the ductwork hid it. The narrow service corridor beyond smelled like warm insulation and mouse. Halfway down, they found an archive room, shelves of Redwells and bankers' boxes, labels handwritten by a dozen clerks over a dozen years. He paused at a box with blue tape that read in rigid caps, "Contractors Access Control." He looked at her. She nodded. He pulled the lid an inch. Inside, vendor badges lay in a plastic bag like a school of dead fish, all expired. Beneath them, a thin folder. "Recurring Access Executive Exemption. Don't touch more than one thing," she said. He held the folder while she scrolled her phone to video. She panned the label. The box. The folder front. Opened. First page. A list of company names with dates, signatures that weren't signatures, just slashes. The same few initials repeated for authorization, HS. She felt her jaw set and let it. "Photograph," he said. "Document," she corrected. "They'll argue theft if it disappears." She took photos. Each page. The tabs. The bottom of the box to show the number on the barcode. She put the folder back exactly, turned the bag of badges so the tops faced out like she'd found them. The quiet beat stretched between them, thick as insulation. The hum here was lower, as sleep sound. Her breath fogged the gloss on a plastic bin and left a small oval that faded smooth. "They'll know we were here," Noah said. "Even if we didn't take anything. Open air smells like intent. They already know we're somewhere," she said. She slid the phone into her pocket, feeling the shape of the vial press against it. Two hard edges. Two choices. Another text from Mara. "Freight is clear for 60 seconds. Then not clear. Go," Noah said. "I'll kill the hallway cam on a timer. If I go dark longer than a minute, they send someone who carries more than a radio." "You put that repeater in for money," she said. "You're pulling it apart for what?" He didn't answer fast. He looked past her at the shelf labels. "Suppliers. Incidents 2019. Holiday decor. Because my kid's mom doesn't own a lawyer, he said. Because the next person with your name on a work order might not know where the freight opens. They moved back through the narrow run to the freight. Noah walked like a man, timing steps to the lull between surveillance sweeps. At the car, the up arrow glowed its small orange lozenge. She pressed it with her knuckle. The doors parted on an empty box. Oil and old rope again. A smear of handprint on the panel at waist height. Someone's day caught as a smudge. Noah hovered just outside. I'm going back to my mess, he said. I'll send you what I can without burning the building down around us. You should find a place to put that card where Sloane's people can't map it with a subpoena. I have a place, she said. He nodded. One more thing. If they seize your phone, don't unlock it. Make them get paper. Make them put a captain's name on the paper. Chain of custody, she said, and his mouth twitched. Look at that, he said. We're on the same page after all. A shadow slid across the far end of the dock, tall and wrong in the sodium light. The sound that followed was small, a shoe foam kissing wet concrete, but it carried. Noah's head turned. His jaw worked. 60 seconds are up, he said. She stepped into the car, the brass key nested against the little vial. Warm and cold at once, the doors met in a soft steel kiss. For a breath, showing her reflection as a slit of eye and cheekbone. Then nothing. The car climbed, numbers thunked by 10. Sherlock. RCE. Her pulse kept pace with the panel beeps until it didn't. At 33, she let her eyes close. At 34, she opened them to glass and wire and air the color of rain. When the doors opened, the corridor outside smelled like toner and lemon again, like someone had tried to wipe the night off with a cloth. The camera above the sconce blinked a polite green. No footsteps. No voice. Her phone buzzed once. Unknown. They're changing the lock. Her fingers found the key by instinct, pressing brass to skin until the pain drew a thin line. She looked at the small mark and thought of doors and hands, and how often you only knew you'd been gripping something when you finally let it go. She didn't let go. Morning dragged its knuckles across the blinds. Blue wash, thin and cold, laid stripes on the kitchen tile. The apartment smelled like yesterday's coffee, and the lemon oil she used on the old oak table. The brass key sat in a ceramic bowl by the sink, dull with fingerprints. She picked it up without thinking, and felt the chill pass into her skin. She set her phone on a folded dish towel, popped the SIM with a paper clip, and slipped the sliver into an empty aspirin bottle. The micro SD in its little vial went beside the stove. Not inside it. She wasn't burning anything, just where the heat would haze a handprint if anyone went looking without gloves. The laptop came out next. Its fan a small sigh. She plugged in a scrubbed external drive, opened terminal, and typed slow. The cursor moved like a patient insect. Outside, the hallway heater kicked on with its familiar cough, then settled to a breath. On the table, she lined up a roller pen, a legal pad, and a strip of tamper tape she'd bought at a surplus police auction. When the hash appeared, she wrote it twice-long numbers that meant integrity when a courtroom needed a picture. The drive clicked eject. She slid it into an anti-static bag, sealed it with the tape, wrote date, time, location, contents, custodian Cobb, witness blank. She pressed the brass key against the adhesive strip until it bit. A small crescent mark. Not a signature, a mark you could testify about. Her phone vibrated once, without a number. She'd left it on Wi-Fi with no SIM for exactly this. Unknown, diner, 10, window booth. Order the apple pie so it looks like lunch. She put the aspirin bottle in the freezer, behind a bag of peas, thumbed the key once more against her palm, and left with the sealed drive under her jacket, flat as a blade. The diner's neon was proud and tired. A red coffee cup that never turned all the way off flickered over the glass. Inside, the heat carried bacon grease and disinfectant. The windows were double-paned. You could see your breath on neither side. She took the booth with the sun scuffing the chrome, and when the waitress asked, she ordered the pie like the text said. The waitress nodded as if people admitted to dessert at 10 all the time. Mara Keene slid in opposite, in a wool coat that cost more than Dion's rent, scarf untied like she'd taken it off walking. She kept her gloves on. The waitress refilled a coffee mug that had been sitting there for a minute too long. "You look like you sleep," Mara said. "That's good acting." "I sleep between static," Dion said. "Static," Mara repeated, as if she were trying on the word. "Right, you still have your job. Technically, that's going to change at noon. Suspension or spectacle?" "They want spectacle," Mara said. "They'll settle for HR's version of mercy. Administrative leave. 2 pages. The second is a non-disclosure, disguised as, 'Let's all be adults.' If you sign, the story is theirs." She picked at a sugar packet but didn't tear it. "They've started a narrative angry staffer, boundary issues, concern for culture." "Culture," Dion said. "Dead flat." Mara huffed. "It photographs well." The apple pie arrived, steam lifted like a small ghost. Dion picked up her fork, cut a corner, and didn't bring it to her mouth. Across from her, Mara's eyes went to the fork, then the windows, then back. A rhythm you develop when bad news sits with you. "Tonight they'll take the cameras down in the garage for sprinkler testing," Mara said. "Dispatch got the work order at 6. It calls for a contractor we used once and never paid again. Guess who approved it?" "Sloan," Dion said. Mara didn't say the name, but her face agreed. "Delaney will run point. You met him with Ruiz in the corridor once, so you know the smell. They'll call it routine. They'll take you by surprise, if you let surprise exist. Who else knows this? A man named Noah Pike pays attention. Apparently," Mara said. "He is either about to become noble, unemployed, or both." She reached into her coat and placed a soft black pouch on the Formica Faraday cloth, the magnetic flap a whisper. "Burner, don't text me on yours. Don't text my number on that one. There's a code in the contacts that looks like recipe measurements." "It's not." "Why help me?" Dion said. Mara's mouth made a small shape that wasn't a smile. "I like my job. I'm good at it. I don't like the part where we create weather and call it climate. Also, I don't want to stand in court beside a man whose email signature puts a trademark by his own name. You could leave. You could, too," Mara said, gently, like a hand pressed briefly between shoulders. Her eyes went to the sealed bag edge under Dion's coat. "You made a copy." "2," Dion said. "One for a bank with a clock, one for a drawer with a note." "Good. If someone with a badge asks, let them use paper. Make them spell subpoena like they went to school." The waitress reappeared to pour coffee none of them wanted. She left 2 extra creamers, warm to the touch, sweating on their sides. Mara lifted one, turned it between her fingers. The brass key on the table picked up a line of light and gave it back. "There's a compliance officer sitting in HR who remembers what the law is for," Mara said. "Name's part. If you give her a chance, she'll keep a file. The board can't misplace. If you push, she'll fold. Choose the right type of pressure. You always carry 2 stories at once," Dion said. "The day you can't, you either quit or you rot," Mara said. She stood, left a bill that would cover the pie, and 2 more, and slid her gloves off. Her nails were bare. She looked like someone who could slip in and out of wardrobes. One more thing. If you see me in the hall later and I don't see you, don't take it personally. There are cameras and there are cameras. After she left, the booth felt briefly too big. Dion took one bite of pie to respect the waitress's labor, tasted cinnamon and manufactured apples, and swallowed without hunger. She put the brass key in her pocket and felt its edge press into the soft place of her hand as she stood. The bank on the corner was new enough to smell like carpeting. The vault door was designed to nudge awe without intimidation, rounded, white, a spaceship's hatch. She presented the sealed bag, showed ID, signed the ledger that exists in both worlds, digital and paper, ink and pixels. The notary printed her stamp on a copy of the hash with a heavy click you felt in your forearm. The key to the little box was aluminum with a hole like a mouth. It turned with a clean, snicking sound. When she stood to leave, the vault's climate felt 20 degrees more reliable than the street. At the precinct, the desk sergeant wore his policy like a sweater he'd washed wrong. He glanced at the envelope, at her, at the brass key. She hadn't realized she was turning over and over like a coin. "You want to make a report," he said without ending the sentence like a question. "I want a case number," she said, "and I want you to note that I told you in person that I brought physical media with hashes, that I did not surrender my phone, and that I'm prepared to provide a sworn statement to a detective with an actual investigator's number." He looked at her for a second longer than protocol. "You a lawyer? Blue-collar version," she said. "Chain of custody with mops." He cracked a smile that lasted as long as it took him to turn to the terminal. Keys clacked in honest rhythm. He wrote like he'd once been teased for neat penmanship and decided to keep it anyway. When he slid the card across, her name sat under the case number like two pieces of tile pressed into grout. "Detective will call," he said, "or he won't. If it dies on a captain's desk, if someone tries to walk you out of somewhere without cause, call us from a place where your teeth won't be introduced to a handrail. Don't unlock your phone. Don't volunteer anything but your name and the words, 'I want counsel.' You know that one." "I do." "Good." And he paused, choosing between caution and kindness. "Don't be where they turn the cameras off." She left with the card in one pocket and the burner pouch in another. The steps outside had been salted, but the melt had refrozen in shallow scallops. She took each toe down like a dancer and smiled once. Quickly, at the memory of boot camp ice, measured the same way. The brass key pressed deeper into her palm when her heels slipped and recovered. At 11, Sisher, her badge still sang green at the turnstiles. Stairs turned when she crossed the atrium. Not all of them were hostile. Most were math, people trying to solve for what happens next. With the variables they'd been given, the sconce camera blinked its polite green. She passed the security desk without looking anyone in the eye. Looking is invitation. HR was glass and soft carpet, and a bowl of branded lip balm. Lena Duarte waited in a chair that absorbed people and made them feel small. Ms. Park sat beside her, pen upright, like a bayonet. Sloan didn't sit. He leaned against the edge of the credenza with his knuckles pressed to the wood. A man auditioning for a portrait. "Miss Cobb," Lena said, "we appreciate your punctuality." "Punctuality's a habit," Dion said. "This is a conversation about culture, boundaries, and fit," Sloan said, as if practicing focus group words in a mirror. "We want to make space for healing." Dion let her eyes land on Park. Park's mouth did a small thing, then settled. Park placed one copy of a letter on the table and touched the first paragraph with her index finger. "Administrative leave," Park said, not unkindly, pending a review of allegations. She moved her finger to the second page. This is a release agreement. It includes confidentiality and waiver language. I want it on record that you are not required to sign this to remain on leave. Sloane's jaw twitched. We prefer to handle these things like adults, he said. Dion kept her hands on the table where everyone could see. Palms down, flat, the way a person makes peace with gravity. I'll acknowledge receipt of the leave letter, she said. I won't sign the release. I'm also notifying you that a file exists with time-stamped logs relevant to building security alterations. Copies were sealed and deposited with chain of custody notes. If you wish to examine them, request them through counsel. Lena's eyes flicked to Sloane, then back. Park looked at the table. The HVAC breathed over them. A soft, warm exhale. Somewhere in a vent, a bead of condensation rolled and popped. You're making a mistake, Sloane said. Quiet. For just the three of them, it won't look like a mistake now. It will when the ground moves. The ground's been moving, Dion said. You just stopped feeling it in your shoes. Park slid a receipt across the HR version, signed and stamped. You'll surrender your badge at the desk, she said. Not to any individual anywhere else. Document that, Dion said. Park wrote, Precise, as if the act steadied her. Sloane's knuckles whitened against expensive wood. For a second, nobody spoke. The quiet beat was so complete that Dion heard the scratch of Park's pen tip lift off paper. On the way out, the brass key tattooed another crescent into her palm. She looked at the mark and thought of all the doors one company could claim to own, and all the ones they couldn't see. At noon, the atrium clock chimed a melody crafted to sound like home. Her badge met the reader, went red, and blinked a little apology. The guard at the desk watched a screen like it might tell him what to do. He didn't stand. He didn't have to. Dion set the plastic card on the counter with 2 fingers and kept the brass key in her pocket. The sconce camera blinked its patient green. For a moment, all the sounds in the building, the vents, the shoes, the elevator's breathing became one thing, a low field of static. Then the doors turned gently, and the day took her back. Dusk pressed its forehead to the windows. Streetlights woke in a slow ripple down the block, a sodium bloom that made the snow piles look the color of bruised peaches. In the kitchen, the brass key lay on the legal pad where she'd left it, a small moon with teeth. She picked it up and felt the old nick on its bow catch a ridge of her thumb. The burner hummed once in the Faraday pouch. She slid the cloth aside, let the phone breathe air, and read the message that wasn't a message. 1 sea flour, 2 TCSP salt. Bah. 15 mix. Bah. 20 rest. Bah. 35 need. P2. The recipe wasn't cooking. It was a schedule with a parking level. She set a timer and spoke to the empty room. Okay. On the table, she arranged the things that don't raise eyebrows in court. Headlamp, nitrile gloves, triangular bandage, tourniquet, tape, a 3-inch crescent wrench that belonged to her grandfather, and a Sharpie for skin. No batons, no blades longer than a rulebook, nothing a prosecutor could fall in love with. She wrote a line on her forearm, case, and the string the desk sergeant had given her, then underlined it with her pulse. The brass key went in her pocket where it could be a fist. The Faraday pouch took the burner. Her regular phone stayed powered, locked, face down on the table by the tamper tape. She called a number she knew would go to voicemail after 3 rings. Detective Williams, this is Dion Cobb. I'm calling to supplement my report on the Kincaid matter. I have credible information. Cameras will be disabled in the level P2 garage of my former workplace between 8:15 and 9 tonight. I intend to be present at 8:30 with a security escort arranged by HR to collect personal effects. I'm not armed. I'm not meeting anyone in private. If something goes sideways, my location services are on." She hesitated, then added the thing you add when you've read how transcripts sound on the stand. "I'm in fear." She emailed Ms. Park the same information, notice of risk, and CC'd her own attorney, a man she'd hired with a consultation fee and an honest face. The subject line included the case number and the hour. She blind copied a news tip line with no additional text and attached nothing but the clock. At 7, Ushar, Lena's office sent a polite reminder. As discussed, security will meet you at the south entrance at 8:25 to escort you to collect personal items from your locker. Please do not arrive early for safety reasons. The euphemism made her smile in a place with no humor. She dressed like the weather and not like a fight. Black denim under a plain jacket, boots with soles that actually grip, hair tight under a beanie. The apartment, left behind, looked staged for a listing dishes dry. Bed made military, the brass key's second twin resting in a bowl by the door. For half a second, she stood and listened. The hum of the refrigerator, the fan in the bathroom turning itself off with a polite sigh, the radiators ticking like a metronome too proud to stop. The city's cold burned clean. Her breath made fog that hung like chalk marks, and then let go. Traffic made ribbons on the overpass, headlights smearing into a single thought. She reached the south entrance 2 minutes late on purpose and found a man in a navy parka, practicing boredom with his hands in his pockets. "Cobb," he said. "Pike," she said. He nodded once, then let his eyes skate to the camera over the door and the one on the sconce. The little green irises blinked back. His jaw worked like he was chewing something that didn't want to be swallowed. "HR said one locker," he said, "simple in and out." That the script, he didn't answer. He held the door for her and kept his body between her and the glass, because that's what men who've thought about bullets do. The lobby's heat came like a bus exhaust. Pine cleaner, new carpet, a glass that made rain look expensive, even when it was just snow turning into water. The brass key in her pocket caught the building's climate and got warm. In the elevator, he stayed quiet until the doors shut and the car started moving. Then he spoke without looking at her, chin tucked to his chest as if he were reading something written there. "I didn't call you back," he said. "No. I wasn't sure if that made me smart or a coward. Could be both." He huffed once, a dry sound. "You've got eyes on the cameras. I watch their blink rate in my sleep. P2's going dark at 8:15 for sprinkler calibration," he said. "Contractor badged in as Wexler Mechanical is Delaney's cousin with a laminated smile. If we take the north stair down, we'll hit the corner with the column that gives you 3 blind approaches. If we take the south, we make the camera while it still blinks, and then walk into the blind from the other side. Either way, there's a spot where you can't be seen. Where would you stand if you were me?" she said. "In a place where somebody else is already standing," he said, "and make the first noise they have to react to a man's voice on 911. The elevator dinged a floor too early, and 2 suits stepped in, mid-sentence, carrying a meeting between their teeth. Silence settled over the 4 of them like a lid. When the men got off, Pike restarted the sentence exactly where he'd clipped it. "I can get you past the badge reader and to the locker," he said. "After that, you either trust me or you don't." "I trust gravity and chain of custody," she said. "Fair," he said, and almost smiled. "I'll tell you another thing. Sloane's too confident. He thinks fear is a universal adapter. That's when men like him get the most people hurt." The elevator exhaled the garage. Concrete seemed to generate its own weather. The air felt 10 degrees colder and smelled like tires. The sound ventilation, distant compressors made a low ocean you heard in your teeth. Emergency signs glowed red without apology. She checked the clock on the wall. The one property managers leave to make security look organized. Bah, certi. The camera over the ramp blinked green and then, with a microscopic shrug, went to sleep. Routine test, Pike said, loud enough for the mic that wasn't recording. 2 minutes. Roger, came a voice from his radio, a voice too casual to be sober. Delaney. Pike led on the south catwalk, not a run but not strolling. At the far end by the stair, foam plugs stuffed an inspection port on the sprinkler trunk, and a tool bag sat as if it had always belonged. A wet floor sign leaned upright and useless. Beside it, under the fire shutter track, was a little tab of blue tape with a date written in neat hand. An inspector who'd signed his conscience and left. "Watch your step," Pike said, too natural. And as he said it, he took his own advice and set his boot on nothing. The floor didn't move, but the space around them did. An engine's idle swelled, then cut. A door latch clicked without echo. The kind of quiet that has intention sat down on the garage and didn't move. "Ms. Cobb," Delaney said from somewhere behind the column. "Appreciate you making the time." She didn't turn her head. Pike's radio hissed a breath that wasn't a voice. She eased her left hand into her pocket and curved her fingers around the brass key's warm belly. It fit the line of her palm like an answer. "You can keep talking," she said, and it came out like she was annoyed at a delayed shipment. "My lawyer likes transcripts." "We're not doing lawyers in a parking lot," Delaney said. His boots showed before he did oil, dark soles chewed. He came around the pillar with 2 men who didn't wear uniforms and didn't need them. They walked like they were ready to lie under oath and looked like they were telling a bedtime story. Pike made a small pivot with his body, just enough to put half his shoulder between Dion and the nearest hands. His radio made a click that might have been a code, might have been nerves. He kept his voice even. "Per HR. I'm escorting Miss Cobb to retrieve personal effects," he said. "After that, we're done." "Per operations," Delaney said. "We have a situation to handle first." He said, handle like he meant pulp. He lifted his chin, and one of the men drifted left, the other right, as if they'd rehearsed in an empty apartment with taped corners. Their eyes avoided the dead cameras like you avoid a landlord. Dion breathed once through her nose, long enough to feel the cold come in and the warmer air go out. She set her feet the way a person stands at a sink, a stance pickpockets loathe. She took the crescent wrench out and held it by the jaw, not the handle small, unthreatening, ridiculous. She heard her own heartbeat as 2 beats under the building's hum. "This is the part where you tell me to be smart," she said, looking at Pike without giving him the dignity of a question. "This is the part where I tell you to put your phone on speaker and call 911, he said, not moving his mouth. She did it in one motion that looked like fidgeting. The burner didn't have her prints on it in any way that mattered. It did have a battery, and a number the city couldn't ignore. The call rang once before a woman introduced herself, clipped and awake. 911. "What's your emergency?" "Ambush in a private garage at the Lambert Tower. Level P2, Dion said. "Cameras are offline for a fake sprinkler test. 3 adult males. 1 named Delaney. I am not armed. I am accompanied by Security Officer Pike. I'm placing the call on speaker and setting the phone on the ground. We will comply until we cannot. What's your name?" "Ma'am." She gave it. Pike gave his. The line stayed open, a living wire on the concrete. Delaney's mouth did something that could have been a smile if his eyes had the muscles. "That's cute," he said. "It won't help you down here. It will help you later," she said, and set the phone gently at her feet, where the mic didn't need posture to hear. For a moment, nobody moved. The garage's quiet gathered itself into a single point, the one right between the three men's shoulders. Somewhere high up the shaft, a fan cut off and left the air too still. Then a fourth sound entered the room, small and authoritative. A metal pop. The inspection port on the sprinkler trunk burped a bead of water that shivered and fell. The drop hit concrete with a noise that grounded everything. A simple, clean click in a chamber full of lies. Delaney flinched a degree. Pike saw it. So did the other two, and hated it in themselves. As it happened, Dion let the moment pass through her and didn't chase it, because the first mistake doesn't win the second. Ms. Cobb, Delaney said, recovering to the script. A man like him carried in his shoe. We can do this with dignity. You're allergic to the word, she said. He rolled his shoulders once, and the two moved in. Not rushing, not slow. The way men who've done this often count down their choices, and pick the one with the cleanest paperwork aftermath. She took a half-step back, enough to make them think she'd yield the corner. Pike leaned the weight of his stance onto his heels and let his hands be empty where they could be seen. Ma'am, the operator said from the floor, units are en route. Stay on the line. We're here, Jian said. For an instant, small as the brass keys crescent, the entire garage paused and held its breath. The cameras above them stayed blind, little glass eyes with their lids down. The emergency exit sign threw a red stripe across the metal door and onto the floor. The light found her knuckles as she turned the key inside her fist, and the brass answered with a dull glow that looked almost like heat. The dark came one notch closer, and then the night moved. The first footstep broke the stillness, then another, rubber whispering on damp concrete. The sound, thin as paper tearing. The brass key pressed a crescent into her palm. It steadied her. Easy, Pike murmured. Not to her exactly, not to them either. A pressure valve of a word. He shifted half a step. No more. Shoulders angled to block the closest man's line. Delaney's hand came up palm out like peace, but his eyes kept sliding to the dead camera, then back to her shoes. He was counting distance. He was counting the beats between siren and entrance. You get to walk out, he said. You just do it quiet. No, Dion said. One syllable. No ornaments, no permission. The man on Delaney's right smiled in the way a jaw smiles before it hurts someone. He reached with his left to catch her sleeve. She let him have cloth. She did not let him have her. Her wrist turned inside his grip, the way a key turns at the bottom of a pocket. She pivoted on the ball of her foot. The crescent wrench tapped his knuckle with the economy of an accountant. A clean pop, small bones startled out of their opinion. His fingers opened on instinct. She let the sleeve slide free. Pike's radio crackled like a throat being cleared. South door check. A voice said, casual and wrong. He clipped the mic, thumbed it without looking. Stand by. The second man came in low, elbows in. Shin ducked, ugly, and practiced. She saw what he wanted. Hair knees. She gave him shin instead, the boot edge kissing the meat where hamstrings hide. He cursed. The sound vibrated under the garage hum. Delaney sighed. Not impatient. Disappointed. This is messy, he said. It didn't need to be messy. Mess is your business model, she said. Ma'am, the 911 operators said from the concrete. Units are at the block. Keep talking to me. We're here, June answered, and her breath fogged in the cold. As if the word needed a body, Delaney gestuurd. 2 fingers. They fanned to flank. Pike moved with them, but not enough to be theirs. He put himself on the long side of the triangle, the side that could break and look like it happened by accident. Look at me, he said. Quiet to her. Do not look at them. Listen for the shoe. The shoe scraped the one with a chunk missing from the heel, and she didn't turn. She let sound paint his approach at her back. When the shoe reached the dark smear by the column, she sidestepped into the angle and let his momentum gift her his wrist. The wrench's jaw made a small, persuasive kiss against tendon. He yanked back. Pain traveled through him like electricity hunts ground. Delaney stopped pretending. He nodded at the other man, and the man pulled a short baton from his jacket, the compact, black kind security catalogs call compliance tools. It made a sharp little click as it locked. He rotated his shoulder once. Testing range. Testing distance. His eyes were calm. Pike set his feet. Don't, he told the baton. He said it as if the metal could hear. Delaney flicked his gaze at Pike, then left again. I don't pay you to tell me no. You don't pay me enough to say yes, Pike said, a dry humor line he didn't feel. It bought one heartbeat. She took it. The inspection port's foam plug shivered like a held breath. Water purled, then bumped free and fell. Tiny bomb finding Earth. The droplets slapped. In the same beat, she reached up with the wrench and seated it square across the thin metal cap. Hey, Delaney started. She turned. The torque was precise and stubborn. Metal squealed. The cap spun half a turn, then one, then shot to the floor and rolled, ringing, as a pressurized ribbon of water knifed downward and burst. The stream hit the deck with a sound like rain being born. It spread fast, a cold skin sliding across concrete. The smell came up iron and chlorine and old pipe. Everything changed. Alarms woke. Not the fire horns, those stayed asleep, fooled. But the tiny brains in the flow sensors told the building a story, and the building answered by throwing every light to full glory. The garage flooded in white. Shadows went thin. Hiding places lost their privacy. Delaney flinched for real. His pupils pinholed. His men lost the comfort of murk and found themselves. Dion kept the wrench. She didn't chant "watch your footing" in her head because it would have been superstition. She let the water decide where her boot went and trusted friction. The baton came at her wrist. She dropped it, her wrist, not the wrench, and the baton skimmed off the ridge of ulna and kissed air. Herr She catalogued the sting and kept moving. Turn that off. Delaney shouted at no one with a wrench. Negative, Pike said, with a strange, polite brightness. He raised his hands, shoulder height, and turned to present his side to Delaney like a fencer. Policy says, we don't touch life safety during a test. Policy, Delaney said as if he were insulting a childhood friend. Get out of my way. The baton guy came again. Slick boot, sliding on slick floor. Dion let him overcommit, and then became absence where he'd hoped to find her. He slipped past, saved himself with a hand on the pillar, and in that moment she saw his ring, and the tiny nick in it, and had the indecent, human thought, somebody loves him. She hit his forearm anyway. The wrench did its job. The baton clanged away. Ma'am, the operator said, louder now. Sirens bled into the call. Thin at first, then animal. Officers are on your level. Put the phone on the far side. Hans visible. Copy, Dion said. She towed the speaker into the dry corner near the service door where the current was slower and set both hands up where the red exit sign could write its light across her knuckles. Hands visible, she repeated, for the invisible record. Delaney assessed, recalculated, tried charm again without the charm. You don't have to be difficult, Ms. Cobb. The cameras are down. The lights are up. The line is hot. That's not me being difficult, she said. That's me being seen. Very faintly, through concrete and distance, came the deep thud knock of a battering ram. Finding a door, not theirs yet. Another entrance to the building. The sound arrived like weather. Delaney made his call. Finish it, he told the empty air. He didn't nod. He didn't need to. The third man's hand, the one who'd hung back, who'd kept his jacket closed, went under fabric. Pike moved. It wasn't a heroic leap. It was a simple, ugly two-step that put his body where Dion's chest had been a breath ago. He took the first hit in the vest, a meaty whump that made him grunt. The second round found the gap at his shoulder and said hello to muscle. He sagged to a knee. His face surprised itself. The crack of the shots flattened against the concrete. Time got thin. In the strobing booth of panic, Dion saw three important things: the muzzle, the angle, the brass ejecting like hot beads, the way the spray pattern kicked water up where bullets entered, the way the shooter's wrist showed a stupid tell on the third squeeze. She didn't draw. She didn't carry tonight. And that had been the plan. She went low. Hard. A lineman's cut at the shooter's ankle, and his structure forgot itself and folded. The gun barked into the ceiling and bit a pipe. The stream above them doubled, then tripled, and the garage became a river with a jaw. The smell of wet dust went sharp. She got her hand on the gun without owning it. She used the wrench's jaw to drag it away by the trigger guard. Careful as a midwife, it spun and fetched up under the lip of a wheel well. She put the wrench down over it like a paperweight and stepped back, palms high, fingers spread, breath loud. "Do not touch the weapon," she said, for the woman on the phone, for the microphones she could not see. "Weapon is secure under the front driver's side of a gray Accord. Plate ending 471. Pike sucked air and tried to stand. His eyes were bright with pain, wet around the edges like glass with dew. "It's fine," he lied. "It's a graze." "It's not," she said. She crouched without lowering her hands, an old trick, and used her chin to point. "Tourniquet in my left pocket. Blue rubber. Take it." He swore affectionately at the color and fumbled it around his upper arm, one-handed with a practicer's clumsiness. She wanted to twist the windlass for him. She didn't. He cinched it. The vein under his skin became a blunt line. "Hands." A new voice shouted. Finally theirs, loud enough to crack the cold. "Hands where we can see them. Do not move." Dion already had hers up. She held them higher. The brass key flashed at her wrist as the exit sign kissed it. She felt ridiculous and alive. "On your knees." Another voice, "Do not reach. Do not reach." She went down, water soaked through denim, and found her bones with speed. Her breath came steady, because steady is a habit. She looked left to Delaney and saw his face for what it was, without his lights. He'd gone pale, where blood used to live. He lifted his hands with exquisite performance, palms forward, elbows wide. The world's idea of surrender. His pupils were dark again, swallowing light. "Officer injured," Pike called, voice ragged but form. "Shoulder wound. He's bleeding." Tourniquet applied. "Shooter," as he coughed, swallowed, finished, contained. Boots came, hard rubber, purposeful. Shouting layered over. Shouting to make a carpet of commands. She kept her eyes on the key. She said her name when asked. She said she had nothing on her but a wrench and despair. Somebody chuckled without wanting to. She said there were cameras down and audio up, and that she wished everyone a good night. Gloved hands found her wrists and folded them back with less cruelty than she'd prepared for. Plastic bit. Someone hauled the shooter by his jacket. Someone else turned Delaney to face the wall, with the same care you'd use to keep a bathroom mirror from cracking. One officer knelt beside Pike, glanced at the tourniquet, tightened it with a grim professional respect. "Good work." She told nobody and everybody. "Hold pressure. Don't be brave." "Yes, ma'am." Pike breathed, eyes on Dion for 1 second. Apology and choice, both sitting in them like two coins in the same pocket. "Ma'am, the 911 operator said, still with them, her voice warm in the cold like a kitchen light. "We're ending the call. This line was recorded. Do you need anything else from me?" Dion looked at the water. It had climbed over the wrench and lapped the tire, then receded as drainage found itself, and did its job. The brass key cold burned into the soft of her fingers. A half moon. She'd wear the rest of the night. "No," she said. "We needed you. You were here." The line clicked. Silence filled the space she left, heavy as a coat. They propped Dion against the pillar, while the scene turned into paperwork. A yellow tent by a shell casing, a camera on a shoulder writing its rectangle. Someone reading time out loud, so time would listen. She sat in the wet and let the shiver come. Not weakness. A reset. The waterline hugged her calves. It made a tiny slap against the column. An ocean hitting a city in miniature. Delaney stared at the dead camera, as if it might open its eye out of pity. He licked his lip. He looked small. Pike's blood drew a rusted line on the concrete that the flood smeared into pink. He grinned at her around his teeth. "Smart or coward?" he said, barely more than a whisper. "You picked," she said. He nodded. Relief softened his face. Above them, the sprinkler pipe rattled and gave one last cough. The stream narrowed to a steady thread. The wrench stayed where she'd left it, anchoring the gun like a paperweight anchors news. Her hands were bound, her jaw ached where adrenaline keeps its spare room. The brass key pressed that crescent into her palm, so deep now it felt like it might live there. The garage exhaled. Somewhere, far down the line, a door banged open into a hallway of dry air and too much light. The sound reached them last. Like a future trying to be heard, the light stayed rude. Too bright, too clean, like truth with no makeup. The water drained in stubborn swirls toward a steel grate that rattled every time a stretcher bumped over a seam. Voices layered radio numbers, badge names, times spoken slow for the body cam. The garage smelled like wet metal and copper pennies. "Don't move, ma'am." The officer at Dion's shoulder said, "We got you." "I'm not going anywhere," she answered. Plastic cuffs bit deeper when she flexed her fingers. The brass key had stamped a crescent into her palm so sharp it felt surgical. She used the edge of her thumb to push it back into hiding. A woman in navy gloves took photographs low, high, square to the subject. Shell casings sat under yellow tents that looked like tiny pitched roofs in a flood. Another tech knelt by the gun pinned under the Accord, read the serial number aloud, slid a paper evidence bag under it like a receiving blanket. Glock 19, apparent 9mm, one in the chamber, she said for the record. She sealed the bag with white tape, signed across the seam, handed it to a waiting officer who signed too. Pen clicked. Forms dated themselves. "Morales," said a new voice, warm and sanded by use. A detective stood with a notepad, held spine up like a hymn book, coat over a hoodie, hair pulled back because tonight didn't have patience for vanity. She looked at Dion's hands, then her eyes. "You injured?" "My hands are fine," Dion said. "His shoulder isn't." She flicked her chin toward Pike. Two medics worked the wound with quiet brutality. Tourniquet high. Pressure dressing. Lower. A slick of iodine. Turning the skin a color you don't see on living people. Pike's jaw was clenched, but his eyes were soft around the edges. He half smiled when he caught her watching. It came out crooked. A good man apology and a bad night joke in the same mouth. Morales listened to the medics call out vitals, then looked back at Dion. "Okay, we're going to take the cuffs off. Slowly. You will not touch anything or anyone, including me. You will not reach for your pockets. Clear, clear." The officer snipped the flex cuffs. turned them outward like he didn't want the plastic to remember her. The first thing Dion did with free hands was lift them higher, fingers spread, palms open to the world and its cameras. She kept them there until the metal bracelet of a softer cuff replaced the plastic, steel-kissed skin, cool and impersonal. The brass key pressed its little gospel anew. Morales crouched, keeping her head below Dion's. No intimidation. I'm going to swab your hands, she said. Standard. It'll feel like a minty wipe. You're not under arrest. Do you understand that? I understand the sentence. Dion said, the comma's doing a lot of work. Morales's mouth ghosted a smile. Hold still. The GSR swabs smelled like pre-dawn in a cheap motel white towel. Bad mint, bled bleach. Cotton circled each palm, each finger. The webbing where a trigger guard would kiss. Swabs went into tubes. Tubes got labels. Labels got a story. Across the way, an officer read a Miranda card to a man who had lost his right to hear it as poetry. The shooter stared at the floor, like there might be escape printed small between cracks. He had started shivering now that the gun wasn't in his hand. Delaney faced the pillar with his palms on concrete as if praying. Water had left a tide mark on his cuffs. A young cop patted him down with theatrical courtesy. When they took his phone, he sucked a breath through his teeth, like a fence could change policy. That's privileged, he said, voice dipped in boardroom varnish. It is now, the cop said. He slid the phone into a Faraday pouch, Velcro whispering shut, and wrote the time with a dull pencil on the bag's face. Batteries died like loyalties. Who runs your CCTV? Morales asked without looking at Delaney. Facility sub. A sergeant answered, third-party vendor. Cut order logged at 1840. Says, scheduled maintenance. I too Morales tilted her head at Dion. Ms. Cobb, you call 911. I did. Morales pointed at the speaker face down near the service door. It wore a skin of dew and garage dust. You mind if I... Evidence. Dion said. Exactly. Morales used her pen to flip the phone. The clock still glowed. The call screen said, ended. She lifted it with 2 fingers, held it aloft, so the body cam could stare, then slipped it into an evidence bag on her own belt. She signed across the tape, chain of custody. She said, half to Dion, half to the future. Detective, a uniforms supervisor called. EMS ready. The security guy goes first. Pike's laugh was a cough. Security guy's a terrible name. He said, you got a better one. The medic asked, tonight. He winced as they lifted him onto the stretcher. Coward with good aim, smart with bad timing, Dion said. Morales stepped close to Pike, her voice dropping to a private register. Men recognize from better moments. You armed when you arrived. Duty weapon is locked in the office. Safe, he said, eyes steady. And then not. I didn't bring it down. You tell anyone you were coming down here, she asked. He looked through her to some place he hadn't chosen. I told no one, he said, and it was the kind of truth that has a bruise in it. As they rolled him toward the ambulance, he turned his head and found Dion again. You're going to have to tell it twice, he said. Once for them, once for you. She nodded like a soldier acknowledges weather. The stretcher bumped, the metal legs chattered, and then he was gone in a red-white flash that swallowed sound for a second and returned it thinner. Morales straightened, took a breath, and then took one more, as if the first hadn't found enough oxygen. Walk with me, she said. They moved through the white to a corner of shadow. The lights couldn't reach a cop's version of kindness. The fans overhead spun slow and blew the cold into their collars. The hum of the building ran under everything, a bass note that made your teeth feel wired. I'm going to ask you questions I know you know the answers to. Morales said. How did you know to open that cap? Dion looked at the dark stripe headed toward the drain. I work here, she said. I know where water lives. You didn't touch the gun after you swept it with the wrench. I did not. Any reason you didn't shoot back? No gun. Any reason you didn't run? Lot of reasons. Morales waited. Silence did its job. People see what they're told to see. Dion said finally. If I run, I'm a runner. If I stand still, I'm a witness. Morales wrote something down. She didn't need. Okay, she said. Okay. A CSI tech approached with a clipboard and a box of envelopes that slept and were woken to hold pieces of the night. Detective, she said, we're pulling a thumb drive from the DVR. It was offline, but the buffer cached 27 minutes. Looks like your party came in through the east stairwell. Faces, hoods and hats. One takes a mask off to talk. We're enhancing. Fast track it. Morales checked her watch and made a face at the time like it had insulted her mother. Patrol will transport, she told Dion. You're voluntary right now. That can only help you later. Voluntary isn't free, Dion said. No, Morales agreed. But it's cheap compared to the alternative. They climbed into the back of a cruiser that smelled like vinyl and old cigarettes, trying to reinvent themselves as Lemon. Dion sat behind Plexi and read the city through the slits where air squeezed, rain misted. Thin and mean, sirens traded places with traffic lights like kids cutting in line. At the precinct, the fluorescent was a colder kind of sun. Booking turned its head toward them, decided they were not its work, and went back to its own. Morales walked Dion past cells that hummed a low complaint and into an interview room built like a refrigerator metal table. 2 chairs, one eye in the ceiling pretending to be a smoke detector. Water, Morales asked. Not yet. The detective set a small digital recorder on the table, pressed the red circle with a fingernail, and said the date and time and her name like a poem. Dion watched the little red light blink. It looked like a heartbeat. You are not under arrest. Morales said again, you are free to leave at any time. If at any point you want a lawyer, say so, and I will stop. Yes. Yes. State your name. Diane Ruth Cobb. They went from there. Not story sequence. Time stamps. Which floor? Which door? Where the wrench came from? Where the phone went? Short questions. Shorter answers. The kind of exchange that trusts the paper will hold more than the air can carry. Morales didn't press where shame lived. She didn't need to know what the fear felt like in the back of Dion's throat when the first shot hit Pike, or how water finds your ankles and makes you 12 again at the YMCA. Counting breaths, she asked about points of fact. She took the weight with her pen. A knock on the glass. The door opened 2 inches. A uniform slid a file across the floor with his foot. Morales didn't look at him. She bent, retrieved the file, flipped it open with the same neat mechanics she'd shown the evidence tape. Facilities logs, she said, more to herself than the room. She turned a page, then another, then found the one that made her eyebrows make a small house over her eyes. She angled the file so the camera could see it. Emergency maintenance order created at 6:31. She read, voice neutral. Approved at 6:33 from the executive account. Her finger tapped a name at the bottom. Delaney had signed his own trap. Morales let out a breath she hadn't meant to keep. Pride, she said softly. It's a hell of a witness. Dion didn't speak. Silence tightened its tie. Another knock. This one was a face. A clean suit with a courthouse haircut and a practiced frown. He nodded at Dion, like she was a colleague who'd double-booked a conference room. Counsel for Mr. Delaney, he said to Morales. My client will not be answering questions. Also, his devices are privileged. Morales gave the man a professional smile, a nice frame for teeth that weren't invited. Your client is currently in a holding room, not an interview, and his devices rode into my evidence locker in a Faraday bag. So don't worry, they're resting peacefully." He flinched at Faraday like it was a slur. "We'll be filing." "Great," Morales said. "We'll be reading." The suit left as if the door owed him money. Morales watched him go, then clicked the recorder off. She let the quiet stay a moment, then pushed a bottle of water across the table. "Now," she said, "drink." Dion cracked the cap. The bottle hissed. The water tasted like a waiting room plastic. And the kindness of tap, it found the dryness at the back of her mouth and put it out for a minute. "You're going to want to shower," Morales said. "Not unkind. There's a locker room for civilians down the hall. Get the metal out of your hair. Get warm. I'll find you a fresh sweatshirt. I have work in the morning." Dion said. "Maybe not the kind you're thinking of." Morales said. "Sit tight." Dion pressed the cold bottle against the crescent the brass key had left, and the ache softened. She listened to the hum coming through the wall, the machine that autopsies claims, the copier that eats affidavits, footsteps, the soft punctuation of a distant laugh that had no right to be there and made this place human. Her eyes drifted to the corner where the paint didn't match. Someone had patched a hole badly. Everyone had left it that way. Morales stepped out to take a call. The door eased shut and left the room to its own breath. On the table, the red light of the recorder looked at the ceiling like a still pond looking at weather. The condensation ring from the water bottle made a small halo that would evaporate without help. In the glass, her reflection floated tired, damp, jaw ticking every few seconds. She turned her palm up. The crescent had paled already, becoming memory. She closed her hand around the key, and the metal warmed to her heat like it had always belonged. Somewhere down the hall, a printer coughed out a sheet. Somewhere across town, an elevator opened onto a floor where the night crew checked the corners. And the corners looked back. Somewhere in a hospital, a man with a tourniquet bruise counted ceiling tiles and let pain remind him he was not lost. The hum held, the red light blinked, the room kept its small, stubborn quiet. Outside the two-way glass, the city shifted in its chair and stared at morning the way a boxer studies a bell. Morning arrived like a subpoena white, oficial, impossible to ignore. The precinct windows bled a thin gray that made dust into weather. Coffee steamed in a paper cup by Dion's elbow. The lid creased where someone's thumb had tried to be gentle. The brass key nested in her palm, warm now. Familiara's breath. "Ready?" Morales asked from the doorway. "As I'll get." They walked a corridor, the color of cold oatmeal. Phones rang with professional indifference. A copier chunked out forms that would tell a version of truth fit for filing. At the end, a conference room held a long table and two short stacks of law. On one side, city seal, chain of custody envelopes, a recorder with its red eye tamed. On the other, Delaney's counsel, Navisuit, stainless T-pin, the air of a man who believed furniture respected him. Delaney sat beside his lawyer, not cuffed, not easy. Stubble darkened his jaw like an admission he hadn't meant to make. He didn't look at Dion. He looked at his own hands, then at a pitcher of water as if it might pour him back the night. "Deposition for purposes of probable cause," Morales said. "Recorder on." Her voice threaded the room without raising itself. "Ms. Cobb, please state your name for the record." "Dion Ruth Cobb." The first questions were plumbing, places, times, doors that opened, doors that should have. Dion kept her answers small and square, building a wall of bricks instead of air. Delaney's lawyer adjusted his cufflinks like a surgeon prepping a risky cut. "Ms. Cobb," he said at last, "is it true? You struck my client with a metal object in a corporate elevator 3 nights ago." Dion's jaw eased a fraction. I prevented a door from closing on my leg. By assaulting him, by not letting him trap me, she said. Your vocabulary is doing cartwheels. Morales didn't look up. The court reporter's eyebrows did. The lawyer tried a smile that needed a permit. You seem very comfortable with conflict. I prefer clean floors, Dion said, but I can work under pressure. He turned pages like he was looking for a better universe. Is it also true you have military training? Yes. Specialized? Yes. He waited for shame that wasn't coming. And yet you chose not to retreat. I chose not to die, she said. She set the brass key on the table, its crescent shadow, almost elegant, and I chose to call 911. You'll find the call log helpful. Morales slid an evidence photo across the table. The timestamp showed a stairwell, 4 men in hat, one with his mask down, mouth open mid-word. The still had the flat honesty of a bad mirror. Do you recognize anyone here? She asked. Dion pointed. Him, she said. The one with the jaw like a misfired staple. He said, boardroom says, hello. Enspropran. Delaney twitched so small it might have been a draft. His lawyer laid a palm flat on nothing. For the record, my client disclaims. For the record, Morales said. Your client approved a maintenance cutout on the cameras at 1833, then texted a number tied to a prepaid purchase 2 blocks from a bar where your client had a bourbon at 1915. We have the receipt and the clerk who liked his cufflinks. Circumstantial. Convergent. Morales said. She didn't raise her voice. She let the room lower its heartbeat. They broke at 10, outside. The courthouse smelled like wet limestone and damp suits. A protest had congealed under the overhang handmade signs, old anger standing carefully. A woman with silver hair and a church hat held a poster that said, don't clean up what you won't own. Someone passed Dion a bottle of water without looking at her face. She didn't drink. She held the cool in her palm until the brass key lost its edge. The arraignment landed after lunch. Delaney in a glass box with a microphone that made everyone sound like Wednesday. The judge's robe looked heavy. Her passions did not. Charges fell out of the clerk's mouth and thudded onto the table. Conspiracy, attempted assault, interference with public safety systems. The word bail entered, pretended to be polite, and left offended. Delaney's knuckles whitened on the rail. For a second, the veins in his throat pulsed like escape plans. No one cheered. The courtroom's hum stayed respectful, the way people hum at a funeral where not everyone is sure who died. Outside, reporters threw questions like, change at a toll booth. Morale's hand rose once, cut the air clean, and all that noise fell as if scripted. We'll try this in a courtroom, she said. We won't try it on the steps. By evening, the city had taken off its tie. Streetlights lifted and blinked into the rain. Dion went home on a bus that breathed diesel and forgiveness. The driver had a Saints lanyard and a thermos that smelled like cinnamon. 2 teenagers argued softly about a video game character. Neither would outlive. The route creaked over potholes that remembered more than some men. Her apartment welcomed with its old radiator hymn and the lemon cleaner she trusted more than most people. She showered until the garage left her skin. She set the brass key on the sill beside the stained glass ashtray that had been her mother's. The ashtray caught the streetlight and threw it back broken and pretty. On the table lay the thing she hadn't touched in years. A discharge folder, olive drab, edges gone to fur. She opened it with careful disrespect. Papers breathed. A photo slid free 12 faces in desert light. Everybody squinting at the same sun. She tapped the names quietly. When she reached the one that had written letters in block caps and died between syllables, She closed the folder and set her palm flat on top. A knock. 2 beats. Pause. One more, his rhythm. Pike stood in the hallway with a sling and a grocery bag, and the look of a man who'd learned how to be grateful without performing it. He smelled like rain and hospital soap. "I brought soup," he said. "It's illegal how much salt is in it." "Lawless soup," she said. "Come in." They ate at the counter because the table looked occupied by history. Steam fogged the window until the city blurred into a patient animal. Pike blew on his spoon. His wince came late and honest. "You'll keep the job?" he asked. "Job's gone," she said. HR left a very polite voicemail full of words like restructure and fit. He nodded like that had always been one of the dice. "I can make calls," he said. "Not good ones, but true ones. What would you say?" "That you don't miss," he said. He set the spoon down and met her eyes. "And that you don't flinch." Silence did what it does best, work. "I lost something," he said after a while. He touched his shoulder, then shook his head. "Not this." A certainty about how many doors I could keep shut by standing in front of them. "Welcome to the lobby," she said. It came out like warmth. They washed bowls. He offered to dry. She told him the towel bites. He laughed once, short and surprised. Before he left, he skimmed the ashtray with 2 fingers. "Pretty," he said. "It was my mother's," she said. "She quit smoking when I was 8. Kept the color." "Keep the color," he said. He stood in the doorframe like the frame had been built for him. "You need anything, call. I will. Even if I don't." He pointed at the brass key. "That your lucky piece. It's a reminder." Of what? She thought about pipes and maintenance panels, and the small engineering of survival. "Open what needs opening," she said. "Lock what doesn't." After he'd gone, the apartment settled into its soft ticks and tentative heat. Dion sat with the discharge folder again and wrote 4 lines on the back of a VA pamphlet. Not a speech, a map. In the morning, she carried it to a print shop, where the owner wore a thimble on his thumb like a crown. By afternoon, "Afflux existe. Porter Cobb risk assessment," said the top line, black and unafraid. Below, smaller, "Workplace safety. Incident readiness. De-escalation by design." A phone number that was hers. A motto she didn't hate. Dignity is a protocol. She pinned the first flyer to a corkboard in a laundromat, the second on a church vestibule next to a piano tuner's card and a babysitter's handwritten hope, the third on a coffee shop wall that bristled with bans and petitions and a guy who taught knife skills with vegetables only. People read. People nodded like the page had introduced itself politely. Calls came slower than fear, then faster. A dental office with a patient who didn't like the word no, a shelter where a donor wanted keys he hadn't earned, a union hall where somebody kept misplacing complaint forms. She listened, asked small clarifying questions, drew diagrams in pencil that showed doors and sight lines, and where a plant could live without dying. She wrote policies with the fewest adjectives she could bear. 2 weeks later, a package landed on her doormat without postage, wrapped in brown paper like a book from a library that didn't trust the mail. Inside, a flash drive in a cheap plastic case. No notch, no signature. The drive held 27 minutes of a man in a glassed-in office, his face bent to a burner phone, his lips forming numbers the audio couldn't love, his eyes cutting to a camera he thought was asleep. Dion watched once. Then she drove to the precinct. The lobby had new plants that would not make it. Morales met her by the elevator with a smile that had teeth she finally wanted to see. "You always bring me presents," Morales said. "I bring you work," Dion said. She placed the drive on the detective's palm, in the way you place a coin on a ferryman's hand without touching the skin. "I didn't copy it," she said. "I didn't play hero with it. I see that Morales slid it into an evidence bag and signed the seam with a pen that had run out of patience days ago. I can't promise fireworks, she said. He'll hire better suits. He'll fill the air with words. I know. But paper cuts kill, Morales added, almost cheerful. Enough of them. And men stopped moving. Back home, night lifted the corners of the city and peered underneath. A storm thought about arriving and then did. Thunder walked the block. Rain found the sill and gossiped there. In the ashtray, the streetlight stained the glass red, then blue, then a human yellow that made everything look possible. Dion set the brass key next to the ashtray and didn't pick it up. She touched the window. Cool. She breathed on the glass and drew a small rectangle with her nail. A door inside a door. The fog thinned and the rectangle faded. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. Spare as a receipt. My boss is asking for my home address after I filed a report. Do you take meetings? She typed 3 words and a time. She added an address that led to a coffee shop that was never loud enough to lie. She sent it. She turned the phone face down and let the room have her. Somewhere in a cell, 2 floors under a courthouse, a man rehearsed innocence with a dry mouth. Somewhere in a hospital, a nurse adjusted a sling and told a joke that had made a lot of pain blink. Somewhere in an office that had learned humility the hard way, a janitor leaned a mop against a wall and watched water remember where to go. The storm softened into steady weather. The radiator ticked its old metronome on the sill. The brass key cooled and held its crescent shadow like a promise it could neither make nor break. She left it there. The room listened. The city listened back. And the night, patient as paperwork, kept turning its pages. Sometimes justice doesn't come in headlines or courtrooms, it comes quietly, in the courage to keep showing up when silence would be easier. Diane's story reminds us that standing against corruption or cruelty doesn't always look heroic. Often, it looks like endurance. It's the janitor who keeps the records, the nurse who won't falsify a chart, the veteran who opens a valve instead of walking away. True gold fears no fire, as the saying goes, and integrity, tested under pressure, only shines sharper. The real victory here isn't that the guilty fell, it's that truth survived the night. In a world that rewards obedience and punishes dissent, remembering who you are is an act of rebellion. We all face our own versions of that parking garage, those moments when someone with power says, "Be quiet, it's safer," but silence, left too long, becomes complicity. The choice isn't easy. It never is. Yet every time we choose to speak, to act, to stay visible, we make it harder for darkness to pretend it owns the room. So ask yourself, where are you being told to stay small? Who benefits when you stop believing your story matters? Maybe your voice won't change the system overnight, but it will change you. And that's where every revolution starts. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below. What moment spoke to you most, or when you found the courage to speak up. Like this video if it left you thinking, and subscribe for more stories that shine a light on the gray corners of truth and redemption. And tonight, wherever you are, may you rest knowing that decency, quiet, stubborn, ordinary decency is still a force that can't be bought, silenced, or drowned